The air felt thick with dread as I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on the unbearable sight in our backyard. My son, Ethan, was tied to the old maple tree, coarse ropes biting into his small wrists and chest. His wheelchair lay toppled a few feet away, its wheels glinting mockingly in the late afternoon sun. Ethan's tear-streaked face was pale, his voice trembling with a fear that pierced my heart. "Dad," she said I was ruining the neighborhood. He whispered, each word laced with pain. She said my wheelchair was an eyesore. My briefcase slipped from my hand, papers scattering across the grass as I bolted toward him. Rage and desperation surged through me, a primal need to protect my boy. As I fumbled with the knots, tight, deliberate, cruel, I glanced over my shoulder, sensing the perpetrator was still nearby. And there she was, Margaret Hensley, the HOA president, standing with her arms crossed, a smug smirk curling her lips as if she'd just performed a public service. Her sharp features radiated disdain, her eyes cutting through the air like a blade. "You tied a child to a tree," I said, my voice low and icy as I freed Ethan and pulled him into my arms. His thin frame shook against me, his arms clinging to my neck. Margaret cleared her throat with a haughty cough. "Step away from the tree, Mr. Carter," she snapped. "And be prepared to sign the compliance notice by tonight. This isn't a charity." Her words dripped with arrogance, as if Ethan's suffering was a mere inconvenience to her pristine vision of Willow Grove. Ethan, born with a condition that weakened his legs, had faced countless challenges, surgeries, therapy, the constant reliance on a wheelchair. Yet he was the brightest part of my life, his courage a daily inspiration. To see him reduced to a trembling, terrified boy because of this woman's cruelty was unbearable. "You assaulted my son because his wheelchair offends your aesthetic?" I asked, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. Margaret tilted her head, unfazed. "His presence disrupts the harmonious image we're cultivating. If you don't comply, I can impose fines or push for eviction." Ethan's small hand gripped mine, his whispered plea, "Dad, don't let her do this," fueling my resolve. Margaret Hensley was notorious in Willow Grove, ruling the HOA with an iron fist, doling out fines like candy and silencing dissent with threats. Neighbors grumbled behind closed doors, but no one dared challenge her. If only she knew who I was. As the county's chief prosecutor, I'd built a career on dismantling injustice. But I'd moved here quietly, hoping for a peaceful life for Ethan and me, never imagining the local tyrant would target my son. I bit back the urge to reveal my title, knowing patience would yield a sweeter victory. Instead, I glared at her, my silence a promise of retribution. Margaret thrust a violation notice at me, demanding I hide Ethan's wheelchair from public view. Then she marched off, her crisp blouse and pressed skirt a mirror of her cold precision. I vowed she'd pay for this, but first I had to ensure Ethan's safety. Inside, I checked Ethan's arms, relieved to find no lasting physical damage, though his emotional wounds ran deep. His eyes darted to the window, as if expecting Margaret to return. "Will she come back, Dad?" he asked, his voice small. "I won't let her hurt you again," I promised, forcing a smile. In my study, surrounded by legal tomes inherited from my father, I began to plan. I needed evidence. Photos of Ethan's rope burns, witness statements, anything to expose Margaret's cruelty. My neighbor, Mrs. Clara Thompson, had peeked out her window during the incident. I hoped she'd speak up. As I jotted notes, my phone buzzed, a call from my team at the prosecutor's office. Duty tugged at me, but the image of Ethan bound to that tree burned in my mind. That night, I pored over Willow Grove's HOA guidelines, a maze of rules about lawn heights and paint colors. No clause justified assaulting a child, but a vague line about visual obstructions gave Margaret room to twist her logic. I also uncovered rumors of her questionable fines and missing funds, hinting at deeper corruption. The next morning, Ethan was at the kitchen table, coloring quietly. "Can you fix my wheelchair, Dad?" he asked. One wheel was dented, likely from Margaret's shove. As I tightened bolts, Ethan drew trees, some gnarled, others welcoming. The maple in our yard, once a place of horror, would soon symbolize justice. I left Ethan with a trusted neighbor, Ms. Evelyn, and began my investigation. Knocking on doors, I shared Ethan's story, watching shock ripple across faces. Mr. Harold, an elderly widower, recounted Margaret's threats over his slightly overgrown hedge. Ms. Lena, a young mother, had been forced to repaint her vibrant home a dull beige. A few agreed to testify at the upcoming HOA meeting, tired of Margaret's reign. I learned Margaret's fines often funded beautification projects that never materialized, fueling suspicions of embezzlement. With 2 days until the meeting, I prepared my case: photos, statements, and HOA financial records. My plan was to confront Margaret publicly, expose her assault on Ethan, and hint at her financial misdeeds. My prosecutor reveal would be the final blow, time for maximum impact. Tuesday evening arrived. I settled Ethan with Ms. Evelyn and headed to the community clubhouse, a sterile space buzzing with fluorescent lights. Margaret stood at the front, droning about mailbox designs, her confidence unshaken. I slipped in the back row, folder in hand, pulse pounding. When she spotted me, her lips tightened, but she pressed on, eventually calling out the Carter household violation. She held up a photo of Ethan's wheelchair, claiming it breached HOA rules. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I stood, folder open. "Let's talk about your treatment of my son," I said, voice steady. I have photos of the rope burns on Ethan's arms. Neighbors heard his screams. "You tied a disabled child to a tree." Gasps erupted. Margaret laughed nervously. "Assault? I merely instructed him to move his chair. He was uncooperative." I held up the photos. "Did Ethan tie himself up? Is Mrs. Thompson lying when she says she saw you?" The room fell silent. Margaret stammered. "He was obstructing the view. I had authority. Authority to immobilize a 10-year-old? I shot back. "And what about the fines you've imposed? The missing funds for projects that never happened?" Her face paled. "That's a lie," she snapped. I produced receipts and bank statements, detailing withdrawals under her name. The crowd's whispers grew into outraged murmurs. Then I delivered the knockout. "I'm Daniel Carter, chief prosecutor for this county. Assaulting a child and embezzling funds are crimes I've prosecuted for far less." The room exploded. Margaret's bravado crumbled. Mrs. Thompson stood, voice shaking. "I saw her do it. She threatened me too." Others shared stories of intimidation. As chaos swelled, 2 police officers entered. "Margaret Hensley, we're investigating an assault on a minor and possible embezzlement," one said, cuffing her as she protested. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she was led away. The next day, Willow Grove buzzed with relief. Neighbors waved warmly, grateful for Margaret's downfall. I offered pro bono help to dispute old fines, and more residents came forward with stories of her tyranny. Margaret faced charges of child endangerment, assault, and fraud. At her hearing, the evidence, witnesses, photos, financial records, was overwhelming. She was sentenced to prison and ordered to pay restitution, barred from community roles forever. Willow Grove transformed. A new HOA board prioritized inclusion, building accessible sidewalks and a park with ramps and inclusive equipment. Ethan helped choose its vibrant colors, cutting the ribbon on opening day to thunderous applause. The maple tree, once a site of trauma, now held a swing tailored for Ethan. His laughter as he soared back and forth erased the memory of that awful day. Months later, Ethan and I sat on the porch, fireflies flickering in the twilight. "Dad, I'm glad we stayed," he said. "I don't feel scared anymore." Pride swelled in me. His courage had sparked a revolution. Willow Grove was no longer a place of fear, but a community of compassion, where neighbors helped one another and celebrated differences. This story isn't just about one family's fight. It's a call to stand against injustice. What do you think about Margaret's actions and the community's response? Should HOA power be limited to prevent such abuses? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss how we can confront cruelty and build stronger, kinder communities together.